It all began on February 21st, 1997. Late one night, a man named Mel Waters contacted the radio program Coast to Coast. The host, Art Bell, was accustomed to calls concerning the inexplicable, but Mel's account was extraordinary. He spoke of a peculiar void on his property near Ellensburg, Washington. This chasm, he claimed, had no discernible bottom. It later transpired that Mel was not the first to be aware of this anomaly. For centuries, indigenous tribes of the region had referred to it as the Devil's Hole, avoiding it as a cursed location inhabited by unnatural forces. Local lore maintained that anything cast into its depths vanished without a trace. Over time, these tales faded into whispers, but for those residing nearby, the hole remained a disquieting reminder of the unknown. Before we delve deeper, we'd like to ask for your support. A like and a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. For decades, the inhabitants of the area treated Mel's Hole as an unusual yet convenient geographical feature. Farmers, ranchers, and homeowners alike utilized it as a dumping ground. Old appliances, broken furniture, household refuse, all were discarded into its maw. Yet, no matter how much was thrown in, the void never seemed to fill. Some even reported tossing in refrigerators, automotive parts, and vast quantities of debris, but never once did they hear a thud. There was no echo, no sound of impact, only an unnerving silence. Even more unsettling were the stories from farmers who disposed of deceased livestock there, viewing it as a simple way to manage carcasses. The hole simply seemed to absorb everything cast into it. The most chilling accounts came from pet owners. Dogs, typically fearless, would refuse to approach the vicinity of the hole, some barking and growling. If led closer, others would whimper in fear and recoil, as if something unseen was terrifying them. Even birds never alighted on its edge. Whatever lay at its bottom, or perhaps what emanated from within, seemed to deter all life. Mel was not a man content with mere hearsay. Possessing a naturally inquisitive mind, he resolved to ascertain the depth of the hole himself. Armed with fishing gear, he embarked on an experiment. He attached a 1-pound weight to his fishing line and lowered it into the abyss. 100 feet, then 1,000, then 5,000. The line continued to descend without any sign of resistance. Mel began tying together multiple spools of line, and the cord sank ever deeper. When he finally checked his mechanical counter, he was astonished. More than 15 miles of fishing line had disappeared into the hole, and its bottom remained elusive. To verify his findings, he attached a roll of Lifesavers candy to the line. He reasoned that if water were present, the candies would dissolve. However, upon retrieving the line, the candies were intact, proving that whatever resided within was not a body of water. If Mel's measurements were accurate, the hole was deeper than any known artificial excavation. It surpassed even the Kola Super Deep borehole in Russia, which penetrates the Earth's crust to a mere 7.6 miles. This was geologically inconceivable. The immense pressure and temperature at such depths should have collapsed the walls, caused the borehole to cave in, or at the very least, left some geological trace. Yet, Mel insisted his measurements were factual, and if his figures were correct, his hole defied all established laws of physics. Rumors of Mel's hole spread rapidly. The notion of a bottomless pit, potentially thousands of feet deeper than any recorded, captured the imagination of truth seekers and skeptics alike. Soon, paranormal investigators, enthusiasts, explorers, and conspiracy theorists clamored for answers. Was it a natural geological formation, or something else entirely? As the hole garnered more attention, an increasing number of strange occurrences seemed to coincide with it. Mel Waters himself soon became the target of something far more sinister than rumors. Something that suggested forces beyond his comprehension were intent on silencing him. And as the mystery deepened, it became clear this was no ordinary hole. Mel Waters, unknowingly, had initiated something far greater than himself. What had once been a curious anomaly on his land abruptly became a focal point for government attention. Men in protective suits appeared near the hole. Mel quickly realized he no longer had dominion over his own property. Initially, it was subtle. He noticed signs of trespassers near the hole, unfamiliar tire tracks in the mud, and fresh imprints of heavy military-style boots. But the situation soon escalated. One morning, as he approached his land, a group of government officials intercepted him before he could get any closer. These were not ordinary police officers or state agents. These men were clad in yellow hazmat suits and stood guard around what had once been his property. Their message to Mel was unequivocal. You are no longer welcome here. Mel was bewildered and incensed. He demanded an explanation, but the officials refused to provide one. Instead, they claimed an aircraft had crashed near his land, necessitating restricted access for safety reasons. But Mel knew better. He had lived there for years. There was no evidence of a crash, no wreckage, no reports in the local news, no emergency services. When he pressed further, events took a darker turn. A contingent of men in military attire, along with a civilian official, approached him with an offer. If he agreed to immediately depart the United States and never return, he would receive $250,000 annually for the remainder of his life. But if he refused, they made it clear they possessed the power to make his life exceedingly difficult. One official alluded to the ease with which they could discover an illicit drug laboratory on his property, sufficient to imprison him for a decade. The message was stark. Take the money and leave, or face the consequences. Mel was stunned. He had anticipated resistance, but this was something else entirely. The federal government was involved, and they were prepared to go to extreme lengths to control access to the hole. Despite the threats, Mel remained uncertain of his next step. He contacted Coast to Coast AM a second time, informing Art Bell and the millions listening in on the latest developments. He spoke of the military presence, the threats, and the government's peculiar interest in a hole that ostensibly should not exist. And then, abruptly, Mel vanished. He had promised to appear on the show a third time, but never called back. Art Bell's team attempted to reach him, but he had completely disappeared. His phone went dead, his home was abandoned, and then even his land seemed to vanish. Shortly after Mel's disappearance, the property where the hole was located was seized by the government. No official reason was given, but all records of Mel's ownership appeared to evaporate overnight. Locals who had previously frequented the area found it completely cordoned off. Armed guards prevented any access. Even more unsettling was what began to appear on satellite imagery of the region. Researchers following the story noticed that specific parcels of land near the Monarch Ridge were blurred or heavily censored. This was a chilling confirmation that someone, whether military, intelligence agencies, or another shadowy group, did not want the public to see what was occurring there. As Mel disappeared and the land was confiscated, speculation ran rampant. Had he taken the government's offer and relocated to Australia as instructed, or had something far more sinister transpired? Some theorists posited that Mel had been permanently silenced. If the government was willing to seize his land and erase his records, it was not an exaggeration to believe they might eliminate him entirely. Others suggested something even more alarming, that Mel had been disposed of within his own hole. If Mel's hole was as deep as he claimed, it would be the perfect means to make someone disappear forever. No body, no evidence, no loose ends. Had he simply been erased, much like the land deeds and the satellite imagery? In 2002, 5 years after Mel first brought his story to light, a group of amateur investigators ventured out in search of Mel's hole. Their quest led them deep into the forests of Kittitas County, Washington. They hoped to uncover what the government was concealing, but what they found was even more perplexing. Despite old maps referencing the area, the hole was simply gone. Had it been filled, buried, obliterated, or was it still there, meticulously concealed under government surveillance? The mystery remained unsolved, and it was about to take another shocking turn. Years after Mel Waters' disappearance, the legend of his hole had not waned. The inexplicable government intervention, the abrupt seizure of land, and the eerie tales from locals only fueled public curiosity. If the hole had indeed been buried, why had the government gone to such extreme lengths to keep it hidden? Determined to uncover the truth, a collective of amateur investigators and paranormal researchers once again set out to find the infamous abyss. Among them were documentary filmmakers, independent researchers, and a handful of thrill seekers who had followed rumors of bottomless pits, government secrets, and strange geological anomalies for years. Equipped with modern technology, they believed they held an advantage over those who had come before. If something was truly hidden within Mel's hole, they were going to capture it on film. But first, they needed to locate it. Finding Mel's hole proved challenging. Without an exact map, they relied on older interviews, satellite images, and the accounts of local residents who claimed to have seen or heard stories of the pit before the land was seized. They scoured areas near Monarch Ridge, where the hole was rumored to be located. Initially, it seemed hopeless. The terrain had changed over the years, and if the government had taken steps to conceal the hole, they may have filled it or hidden it beneath an artificial landscape. But then, one of the investigators stumbled upon something peculiar, a section of disturbed earth, distinct from the surrounding terrain. The ground beneath their feet felt hollow, almost unnatural. Excited, they began to dig. After several hours of labor, they unearthed an opening lined with stone, precisely as Mel Waters had described decades earlier. This was it. The fabled hole was still there, concealed, but not obliterated. They wasted no time in preparing their equipment. The team set up a high-tech camera system, equipped with infrared capabilities, thermal imaging, and night vision. And reinforced cable was attached to the device to ensure safe retrieval. The plan was simple: lower the camera into the hole, record the descent, and analyze the footage later. As the camera began its slow journey downward, the team gathered around the live video feed. They watched as the walls of the pit came into focus. At first, everything appeared normal. The stone walls were smooth and surprisingly uniform, as if carved by something other than nature. There were no signs of vegetation, moisture, or debris clinging to the edges. Then, the camera reached a depth of approximately 100 feet. Something went awry. The temperature readings on the monitor plummeted, far lower than the team expected for in subterranean space. Infrared sensors struggled to maintain accurate readings. Nevertheless, they persevered. At 300 feet, the camera detected something unusual, a faint luminescence flickering in the darkness. Initially, it was barely perceptible. The investigators leaned in, observing the light pulsate, not like a reflection or natural glow, but as something deliberate, almost alive. One of the researchers whispered, questioning if it could be bioluminescent organisms, but that did not explain why the light appeared in precise rhythmic patterns. The glow would appear and disappear almost like a heartbeat. Then, movement. A shadow seemed to dart across the screen. It momentarily obscured the light completely before vanishing. The team exchanged nervous glances. They had expected to see rock formations, perhaps even an expansive cavern deeper down. But this was something they could not explain. One of them muttered that it could be an optical illusion, but the tension in the air was palpable. They continued to lower the camera. At 500 feet, the camera suddenly jerked. Something had touched it. The screen flickered as if the cable had been snagged or caught. The lead operator kept his hands steady to maintain tension on the line. The team fell silent, fixated on the screen as the camera regained its stability. Then they saw it. It was a shape, indistinct but undeniably something large, seemingly moving just beyond the reach of the infrared lens. It was not an animal. It was not a rockfall. It was something that appeared eerily animate. One of the investigators panicked while others hesitated, torn between obtaining irrefutable evidence and protecting themselves from whatever might be lurking below. Then, a sound emanated from the speakers. Not an echo, not falling debris, not static. It was something between an air current and what sounded like a guttural whisper. The lead operator hit the retract button, pulling the camera to the surface as fast as the winch allowed. The screen flickered. Artifacts marred the video feed as the camera ascended higher and higher, moving away from whatever was in the pit. Then, abruptly, the screen went black. The footage obtained raised more questions than it answered. Whatever was lurking in Mel's hole was not a mere optical illusion or a technical malfunction. The distorted images, strange sounds, and peculiar movements deep within the abyss pointed to something beyond normal comprehension. Theories began to circulate almost immediately, each more unsettling and bizarre than the last. One of the most controversial theories posits that Mel's hole is not a natural phenomenon at all, but part of a classified government project. Some believe the U.S. military discovered the hole long before Mel Waters spoke of it publicly, and that it has been used for experimental purposes ever since. The biggest clue pointing to this theory is the government's reaction. If Mel's hole was merely a peculiar geological anomaly, why did officials seize the land, erase property records, and make Mel disappear? Why were satellite images of the area censored? Why were military personnel spotted in the region? Some speculate the hole might be a failed underground experiment. something so dangerous that the government had to suppress all knowledge of it. The scenarios range from a failed high-energy physics experiment to a deep-sea weapons facility. But the wildest twist in this story is yet to come. As if the original mystery of Mel's hole wasn't strange enough, things took an even more bizarre turn when reports of a second hole emerged, this time in Nevada. According to Mel Waters, before his sudden disappearance, he was contacted by Native American elders who told him of another pit, similar to the one he had discovered in Washington. But this one was different. Unlike the original, which was lined with smooth stone, this hole had a peculiar metallic lining. It appeared to have been constructed rather than formed naturally. Mel, along with several locals, decided to conduct experiments on this new hole to see if it behaved similarly to the original. What they discovered defied logic, science, and all natural laws. Mel and his team devised a series of tests to better understand the Nevada hole. First, they dropped small objects, rocks, sticks, and even a few electronic devices. As expected, nothing made a sound when dropped. It simply vanished into the abyss, just like Mel's original hole. But then came a test that changed everything. A local farmer suggested lowering a live sheep into the hole. At first, it seemed like an extreme experiment, but they wanted to see if the animal would survive the descent. They secured the sheep, tied it to a rope, and cautiously lowered it into the void. The moment the sheep crossed the threshold, it began to scream. Not a normal animal cry. This scream was something deeper, something more disturbing. The sound was unnatural, almost inhuman. The men panicked and pulled the animal back up as quickly as they could. When they retrieved it, they were horrified. The sheep was dead, but not in any way they expected. Its body was completely intact. There were no visible wounds or injuries. But as they examined it further, they realized something was wrong. Its internal organs had been cooked. It was as if the sheep had been placed in a microwave and heated from within. Then they cut into the sheep's carcass. Among its cooked organs was something that should not have been there, a fetus, but an unusual one. Its skin was smooth and grayish, its limbs short but well-defined. And most disturbingly, it had fully formed eyes. The group froze, unsure of what to do. Had they unknowingly chosen a pregnant sheep, dooming both it and its unborn lamb? Then, according to Mel, something even stranger occurred. The creature moved. Before they could react, the creature disintegrated within moments. Its body dissolved into a puddle. Frightened, yet determined, the group continued their experiment. They retrieved a strange substance from the hole, a crystalline formation unlike anything they had ever seen. It was cold to the touch, like ice, even in the desert heat. Then, out of curiosity, one of the men set a piece ablaze. It instantly ignited with an intense blue flame, but instead of extinguishing, the flame never died out. The ice continued to burn indefinitely, without diminishing in size. According to Mel, locals later took the substance to a scientist. He determined it could be a source of energy, but like everything else associated with the holes, this discovery led to greater secrecy, more danger, and more unanswered questions. The events surrounding the Nevada hole sound too bizarre to be real. A metal-lined pit that cooks animals from the inside out. A seal-like fetus, a crystal that burns eternally. Skeptics immediately dismissed Mel's account, claiming his statements were nothing more than an attempt to perpetuate a legend. But believers pointed to undeniable patterns. Both holes seemed deliberately concealed. Both exhibited subterranean anomalies that defied any known geological structures. And both, for some reason, attracted extreme government interest. If the holes were man-made, who created them? And why was the government so determined to control them? If they were natural, what force caused them to behave as they did? And if they were something else entirely, some ancient experiment buried beneath the earth, then the real question was not about the holes themselves, but about what they concealed. For many years, Mel Waters was considered missing. After his abrupt disappearance following his second interview on Coast to Coast AM, no one could find him. His land had been seized, his name erased from property records, and any attempt to verify his story led to a dead end. The man who had introduced the world to Mel's hole seemed to have vanished without a trace. Then, in 2002, he reappeared. Mel unexpectedly called Coast to Coast AM once more. His voice was different, trembling, uncertain, as if he himself was unsure of what had happened to him. What he described was terrifying. Mel claimed he had been abducted by government agents, taken to an unknown location, and subjected to strange medical procedures. He had no recollection of the months or even the years that had transpired since his disappearance. He couldn't recall how he had arrived at his current location, or what had been done to him. Then there were the physical alterations he described. He awoke in an unfamiliar place. His body had been changed. He spoke of strange scars, marks upon his skin that he couldn't account for. It seemed as though someone had operated on him and then erased his memory of the procedure. Perhaps most unsettling was the overwhelming sensation that he shouldn't be speaking. He hesitated when he spoke. His words were measured, his delivery cautious. It appeared he understood that by divulging this information, he was placing himself in immediate peril. As Mel continued to share his account, listeners could sense his mounting apprehension. He spoke of governmental involvement concerning both the sinkholes, the one in Washington, and a recently unearthed one in Nevada. He posited that these were not mere geological formations. In his estimation, they were something far more sinister and deliberate. He believed the authorities were studying them. Then he mentioned something chilling. He alluded to the existence of more of these cavities, that what he had uncovered was merely the genesis, and that these anomalies were dispersed globally. Mel vowed he would return with further substantiation. He stated he had one final piece he wished to convey, something so astonishing it would alter everything. But he never did. It was the last anyone ever heard from Mel Waters. Following his communication in the year 2002, he vanished entirely. Subsequent attempts to establish contact proved futile. No record of his whereabouts surfaced. It was as if he had been expunged once more. The government, predictably, remained silent. Officials continued to disavow the existence of Mel's sinkhole. His land remained cordoned off, heavily guarded, and shrouded in mystery. To this day, no one knows what truly transpired with Mel Waters. The man who found the hole may have fallen into a deeper one himself. Even now, curious investigators venture into the wild territories surrounding the Monastash Ridge, hoping to uncover something that eluded prior searches. Enthusiasts of the paranormal, documentary filmmakers, and thrill seekers persistently explore the area, determined to unravel the enigma. Yet, all depart empty-handed. Mel Waters himself remains missing. No evidence, no further communication, and no definitive answers. The peculiar footage, the disturbing audio recordings, and the bizarre pronouncements remain unresolved, leaving the world to ponder. Was Mel's sinkhole a genuine anomaly, or simply an extraordinary narrative born of imagination? Perhaps the truth resides somewhere in the middle. Until concrete proof is unearthed, the legend of Mel's sinkhole and the quest for its secrets will persist. Your support, a like, and a subscription are immensely valuable to us. And be sure to tap the bell to stay continuously informed of the latest developments and to avoid missing our new video releases.